Welcome back, Reg readers, and we reached the end of a story. The story is, the last few weeks, if you've been watching our Regcasts, we've had HP in, and we've been talking about private clouds and how you build one, whether you do want to build one, what you do, how you make the right first steps. So we've been talking about the overall infrastructure. We've talked about servers. We've talked about the network. And today we reach storage, the end of the story. So thanks very much for coming along for this. Pick up the other ones afterwards. They're available on demand if you haven't seen them. They're pretty good. Don't do that now, because for the next hour, we've got to sort out your storage for you. Now, you don't sort out the storage, as this Regcast will show you. If you don't sort out your storage, then really you're not properly sorting out anything at all, because this might be the weak link that you haven't thought about, or you might have thought about it, just not knowing what to do about it. We're going to sort that out for you today. So who is going to sort that out for you today, you ask? Well, I will tell you. HP, being a very organised company, has managed to sort everyone with the name Phil into the storage bit of the business, which makes things easier administratively, but more difficult for me. So I'll introduce, first of all, at the end of the table, it's Phil Lewis. Hello, Phil.
Hi. Great to be here.
It's lovely to have you here, Phil. So what do you do at HP in the storage bit?
I'm a pre-sales manager for the EMEA region, Europe, Middle East and Africa. So I manage the storage pre-sales team across that region.
So does that mean, when you are pre-sailing to people, do they really get it? Do they really understand what can be done with storage?
I think that's what our role is. Otherwise, we wouldn't be there. I don't think. If we have to explain what it is that we can do for them and for their business.
So they don't diplomatically put. Now, I'm going to give you, as an HP person, I'm going to give you a serial number. So I'm going to call you Phil 1.
Phil 1.
You'll Phil 1, if that's all right.
I'll put that into the database, into the information store. Okay.
It's a sort of a service catalogue of Phils we've
Absolutely.
got here. So, and our other Phil today is Phil Hooker. Hello, Phil.
Hi. How you doing?
Now, what do you do at HP?
So I'm a storage strategist, so again in the pre-sales organisation, more focused on the UK, just storage in general, particularly strategy and future.
You guys work together?
Yes.
Yeah. You get the Phil's jokes all the time, don't you? I'm trying to be original, but it's not very hard. A man who definitely is not Phil is Dr. Stats, the Dark Lord. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Tim. Good to be here.
It's lovely to have you, Tony. Now, this is something close to your heart, isn't it? Because very often, when we're on other Regcasts, you say, and you don't forget about the storage.
Yeah, well, I actually go back to what you said. It isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning of the story.
Oh.
And this is really where everything really begins. It begins with the data, begins with the storage, but people haven't thought about it enough, and now it really does need to become the front of the story.
Okay, so you've got to think about this, and we're going to tell you what to think about. So first of all, I need to remind you about the interface. Above our heads here is the button, which means that you can ask us questions. So please do ask questions of the guys. If anything comes up, you disagree with it, don't like what they're saying, violently agree with it either. That's a good thing as well. But please take part. If you don't take part, then it's just a bunch of blokes talking in a room. And that's not really quite the point of what we do here. You can also download the slides as well. Afterwards, tell us what you think about what we did, because we do take notice of what you tell us. So please do that. Let's get on with it. And so let's have a look. Phil, number 1. By the way, Phil H, you're number 2.
I kind of worked that out.
Yeah,
I can count.
I'm not.
If it's less than 5, I'm good. I've got fingers.
I never quite follow through with these whole things.
Shouldn't it be Phil 0 and Phil 1?
Stop it.
Oh.
Stop it.
Let's not go there.
Stop it. On with this. Phil 1, on this slide here, what do you say about? We're saying that storage has got sort of left behind, forgotten about.
Yeah. I think it has, and I think we need to take aware of where we are today in today's world. The world has moved on, and storage has got to keep up with that. What this kind of graphic does is set up the premise, I think, for the rest of the Regcast, actually. We've gone through a number of tectonic shifts over the last 25 years. I entered the IT industry 25 years ago as a boy in short trousers, and remember the mainframe age, and started working on mainframes.
You haven't changed your trousers.
I can't see, it's
Still
okay.
short.
Snug.
Absolutely. Then we started adding client-server networks in, before moving on to the internet age. And now we're in the mobile, big data and social world that we're in today. The difference is, though, that the first three waves was all about applications. It was all about businesses asking for applications to be rolled out for them, whether it was databases, email systems, whatever it might be. It's different today. The difference today is it's not just about applications. Applications are still key, obviously, but it's about content, it's about information, it's about experiences that you get in this new modern world. As the barriers have been broken down, inhibitors removed, innovation can take place. And so that's what we're seeing in the industry. The problem with storage, unfortunately, is that most of the storage that's out there today was initially designed probably 15 to 20 years ago. And they were designed for silo environments, the application environments that we saw where, basically part of the business would say, we need a database, we need a data warehouse. They'd buy servers, they'd buy storage, and put the application on, and that would be a silo. And then another part of the business may buy the same database and put that in. We really, we're in a different world today that's so inefficient. We're seeing 70% wastage with that model. And all the other costs associated with that, whether it's management, whether it's power and cooling, and all the rest of it. So we really need to move on and have a new model for this new world that we live in today.
But number two, don't you think you just virtualise your storage and the problem solved?
Well, it's not as simple as that. I think one of the key problems we have is the fact that it's so unpredictable these days. And that's probably the biggest thing to talk about. If you go back 10 years ago to what it is today, it's so unpredictable that even with your existing storage rates, you can't virtualise them to that level. You virtualise your servers, you need virtualised storage to go with those.
Yeah.
And that's the big change that's happened. And it's just, I think the biggest thing when we talk about this is, going forward, most organisations don't know what they're going to need in a year's time, let alone 2-3 years' time. Whereas 10 years ago, they had a project that would last 5 years. Yep. They would design it, they knew exactly the performance, the capacity requirements, year on year for 5 years, and designed a solution for that. Now, they have no idea what's going to happen next week.
If I can give you a little example on that, AOL took 9 years to get to 1 million users. Facebook took 9 months. And then 12 months ago, a little company called Draw Something came up with a little app and got to 1 million users within 9 days.
Who?
Yeah, exactly.
You're not one of those million.
So yeah, I've never used it either, but they got to 1 million users. It just proliferated out there on mobile devices. Now, if a business, you take that's a flippant example, but if a business wants to put out a new service out there to its customers, does it know whether it needs to size that service for 100 users, 1,000 users, 10,000, 1 million? And that's the difficulty, I think.
There's even a few more things in this. Lots of people today don't really know what storage they have in the first place. We've heard from the Reg audience time after time that we know we've got this data out there somewhere, but we can't actually find it at the moment. So that's in there. The other thing is that all of these waves that are in here, they're still around. There are still mainframes. They're still being used. There are still big systems. There are still client-server. And what's more, going forwards, there always will be. But the storage needs to be able to respond to all of these things now in a much more effective way than it has done in the past. In the past, storage was always part of something else. For the first time ever now, we've got storage really should be the centre of everything, and it's only slowly changing that people are recognising that.
This brings one thing to mind also for what we're going to talk about today, guys, and don't go into huge detail on it because we'll get into the detail later, but does this mean that what we're saying is that what we've already bought, the storage that's all sitting there, and there's quite a lot of it, is not good for the future, number one? Do we have to replace it with something different?
I think we have to migrate some of the things that's on it today onto new storage and new IT architectures for today's world.
So there is an element of ripping stuff out and replacing it.
There's an element of migrating, yes. Clearly, there'll still be some stuff. We see a hybrid world. You're going to still have traditional IT stacks, but you also need to move things into the new modern world as well.
Expensive, Tony.
But as you said, it's not stuff that has to happen all at once. And one of the slides that we'll come to later actually tackles this very issue.
Well, let's
all about rip and replace.
Let's stop teasing them. Now, Tony, here's some of your research. It's quite recent research, isn't it?
It is, yes. It's come from the Reg readers. Are people actually doing any of this, sophisticated pooling of resources generally? The slide here might be a bit disingenuous because we had a lot of early adopters actually jump in here, so I think that the not at all slide section on the left is actually far bigger.
Hello, that's bad news.
Well, no, I mean, it really means that there's a lot of people still need to understand what they can do and move forwards. And the people that have really done a lot of stuff extensively, the numbers are probably much lower than that. So pooling is happening, but it's happening slowly. And to a degree, it's still happening in silos. It's not yet building an infrastructure across the entire business.
Phil and Phil, is this similar to the guys, this representative of the people you're meeting?
Yeah, we're seeing some of this, and obviously we've already talked about the silo stacks, and the issue that we see is IT sometimes can be acting like a brake on the business, You're not seeing that, Tony? You don't think?
No, we keep hearing marketeers chuck this at us time after time after time. We did a survey 18 months ago where we asked business people, what are the biggest factors holding back your business? Guess what bottom of the list was? It was IT.
Okay.
Top of the list was actually us working together better inside the company.
Well,
so let's not get overburdened on IT slowing things down. Could it be faster? Yes. Is it the biggest break? Probably not.
Okay. I think we talked about this in the very first webcast with Dale and Dave. That we're seeing the proliferation of shadow IT coming to the fore again.
You can't deny that, Tony. Yeah.
There's always been bits of shadow IT. Is it a major factor yet? Probably not in most businesses.
You might have to disagree about that one because it's a distraction for us.
I think a lot of this is about a lot of the infrastructure and procurement and project-based people have in place today. This is really hard to do. If you've got a company that's already set up and they're buying a project-based, or they've got some traditional infrastructure that's very difficult to adapt to this stuff, then it's just really hard to do, and then you have to change so much in the business, it just kind of gets put on the back burners.
And is the business actually ready for sharing resources? Interesting question, because the Reg audience have told us that they've still got silos of people saying, no, we've paid for it, we don't want to share it with anyone else.
Well, I mean, that's definitely true, isn't it? When people have bought stuff, they prefer to keep it for their things.
They want to write their name on it. This is mine, I own that, I can do what I want with it.
Yeah.
Until it breaks and they don't want it, but it's they're focusing on it. They own this infrastructure.
There's infrastructure,
they pretend that we all share it after it breaks, yeah. That's it. So, but I mean, what we get from this slide, I think you guys can all agree with it, is we're very much at the start of the sort of virtualization,
Absolutely.
that pooled storage. There isn't even the whole cloud storage story. It's just it's what you need. It's your ticket for entry to it.
Yes.
And storage management, storage virtualization lags far behind other parts of the business in terms of adopting new solutions. Storage professionals tend to be the most conservative because there's so much risk in changing storage and you've got to keep the data really secure and good. So it tends to change more slowly, but also it's always been invisible, hidden as part of something else. That's the bit that's changing.
Okay. Well, let's have a look at the... You're saying also here, Tony, with this, that there's just not enough knowledge around.
And again, from both the register audience and other surveys that we've carried out, we have found that the understanding of what's possible with modern storage solutions just isn't there. There's a few guys that really do get it, but most people, most IT generalists are still lagging behind. Well, what can I do? Or there's a perception that some of the new solutions might be, too big, too complicated, too difficult for us, too expensive, too hard for us to actually live with over a long time. We might be able to get it in and running with the help of, some skills, but can we actually keep this running over years and years and years? Because the thing that we see as storage is being separated from servers is that those storage platforms are going to exist for a long time as well. They might be used for different things, but they're probably not going to be thrown away quite as quickly as they were in the past.
What do you mean by sophisticated?
Basically anything that isn't the old stuff that we know about. So I didn't use the word sophisticated. We actually had new, modern, different. So things that are just newer than it's a disk, it's part of a server, it's alone. This concerns, things like replicating data, storage virtualization, some of the newer technologies that are coming in, even to a degree the use of things like Flash. How are they all integrated? Can we do automatic tiering? All of these things, there's still a large degree of heard about them, but we're not quite sure where they fit, how we can use them, can we afford them?
again...
Well, the good news is there's a role for pre-sales in helping customers understand that, so that's good for Phil.
Pre-sales guys should never go out of this. Things come and things go, but we will always need pre-sales guys to explain that. Did I put sophisticated in when I
don't know.
your slides?
I don't know whether it was you or whether it was the guys actually making the slides look much better than the ones I provided you with.
Well, I mean, that's in my defence, that is quite a job. So on this, I mean, it is. It does mean that storage gets stuck. But it gets stuck for a reason, and if you have people who are risk averse for a good reason, then you need to be really sure that what you're saying does not increase that risk level, just for just to be able to get to the next stage of the things you want to sell. Really.
No, absolutely. But the data, the information that's on that disk, absolutely so important to the business. So we understand that totally, and there is a risk, but we have to show. The return on investment, the cost savings, the TCO type stuff that makes it relevant to look at the change to the new model.
Mm-hmm. Just a quick question in here from Paul. He's asking if we're going to address storage area networks. We're not, are we?
Not in any detail. No.
But if you're interested in storage area, let's do it this way. If you're interested in storage area networks, then then when you give the feedback, then then you're quite prepared to sort of give a little bit of just get in touch or something like that. If you're interested in that, they're not going to force themselves on you in that sort of You mentioned you sent in a slide, you sent in a question to the register, and now we're going to bug you for the next 6 months. But if you're interested, let them know, and they'll be happy to sort it out. Let's also have a look at the bars here on this. All the bars are the same size, Tony?
Well, they're all very nearly the same size. This, again, was a survey that we ran with the register audience just before Christmas, where we asked them, if you didn't have any of this, existing stuff, I think the term is legacy. I don't think it's actually that legacy. It's really being used for a reason.
More traditional.
All of the stuff that you've got already, if you didn't have that, what would you like to be able to do in a perfect world? And basically, you can see a few of the examples here. Having the capability to provision stuff really quickly with just a few tasks, have things automatically look after the resources themselves without us having to spend all of our lives, just twiddling with, buttons and changing things, and then having a unified management stack that let us look after, everything at once rather than having to move between multiple tools. All of these you can see are, desirable or highly desirable. Why the people on the right think the small number of those red bars on the right think they're not desirable, I don't know. They look to me to be the sort of capabilities that if I was still a real IT guy, I'd appreciate.
Yeah, if you don't appreciate those in your perfect world, please let us know in the questions, because we'd like to sort that out. Why do you think it is number 2?
Why they don't want it.
Why they don't want it, yeah. What's the problem with provisioning in a few clicks?
Well, I mean, to me, I would expect 100% of people to want that. It seems quite straightforward. I think there's a certain amount of fear in there that this is maybe my role, is to provision storage. And actually, what we're trying to say is, if you could take the mundane stuff away, let the system do it with a couple of clicks, and then you can focus on the more interesting stuff, the futures, the planning, some strategy type stuff. I think that, that's really where we're trying to get to. There's no reason on earth that it should take half an hour to an hour to provision some storage to a host. That should be click, button, OK. It should be as straightforward as that with the array today.
And I also think the general way of managing in operations will change, so that it's not just going to be doing that planning and that strategic stuff, but we're going to be having to access data in different ways for different people as they come along. So I think there's going to be far more dynamic requests to actually reach into data pools that people hadn't accessed before, so they don't know how to. So I think that the nature of those routine tasks will change as some of this more mundane things get automated.
Yes, that's going to be tricky if we have the assumption with private cloud that you can dynamically expect something to happen just by asking, and please can I have it not in 3 weeks' time.
Yes, and that's absolutely what we're working towards. I wasn't surprised by these results, to be honest with you. Apart from some of the reds, maybe. And I love the question on unified approach to management, because that's exactly what we're working towards, and within HP. I think we're lucky, or fortunate within HP that we play in all the major parts of the data center, whether that's server storage, networking, the facilities, the management of the data centers, etc. And we're looking at that holistic approach on how do we manage all of that as one whole.
It means within HP that you guys have to sort of play nicely together as well. It's not just in the data centre, is it?
Convergence takes many forms, I think.
Change management for yourselves, isn't it?
Well, it is, and that is interesting because everything now that we're doing, we are trying to make sure that every component will converge with each other. You're having a common set of DNA that everything is built on, so that everything will fit together, will be managed by a single tool.
We're going to get to more of that later, aren't we? You said, having looked ahead.
Just one quick thing. You mentioned the word change management. Can change management actually keep pace with the technology now? When you can alter things so quickly, change management might need to change. Might need to accelerate, because some things you can say, okay, yeah, you can do that without any other form of things blocking it. But when you've got some of the security elements, or who can access different types of data, that they haven't previously, do they have the rights to that? Can we let them do it? All of these things need to be looked at higher levels.
So it's not just about buying new stuff.
It's not just about technology, it's people and process.
When it took 3 weeks to deploy a new server, it was easy. Change management was easy because it went in parallel and it took a week, didn't matter. Now it takes 30 minutes. Suddenly, to change control is a big delay factor then, and it's about adopting those things. It's a very important topic.
Okay, well, and which we'll get back to. Let's have a look. Let's just finish off on your pie charts, Tony.
Well, there's one more after this.
Yeah,
but this is the architecture vision again, and we said to people, granted that some of these capabilities we just talked about, might be coming. When do you think they're going to happen? Is it going to happen, next week, the week after? Again, we've got a lot of early adopters here, so the nearly 16% that think that they're already there. That's very high, but there are a lot of service providers that have done a lot of this because they're actually provisioning this type of service to their paying clients. So, they're slightly skewed there. But the interesting thing is that the number of people who think it's going to take, more than 10 years, and this is the register audience, who are not the easiest people to convince that everything's going to be blue sky, the day after tomorrow, believe that, there's only 20% saying it's going to take 10 years or more. Most people think that it's going to happen within the next few planning cycles of how they change their IT infrastructure.
Okay.
A lot of these capabilities are going to be there. So there's an acceptance that things are going to change, and they're going to change in IT terms pretty quickly.
So you're saying that 20%, that 19.8% is a low figure. That's surprising.
It's lower than I thought it would be, because I assumed that everybody would be very cynical, that, we can't do all of this stuff. It's not there. It's going to be there, blue sky tomorrow.
Good. And finally, this is how organisations innovate, isn't it?
And this is, how do people change? Granted that we can't rip and replace everything. As you can see, there's 4% say that we can do a big single transformation and change life, the universe, and everything. The most pragmatic thing that's come out of this survey, and indeed many other surveys we've run with the Reg audience, basically say the best idea is to build yourself effectively a beachhead. And that's a complete system that one might be funded according to one purpose, but it's something that can be expanded to work more in this pooled infrastructure type fashion. It might not have been funded as an infrastructure for the entire data centre, but put yourself in an architecture that allows you to expand and move forward progressively. So stick it in and then migrate things to it. The number of people on the left there who say that they're not going to change anything because they're going to be left largely as they are, they might be in severe financial straits, or the business might just be doesn't need to change. There are some businesses that really don't need to change. So this is pretty good, but it's common sense. Put stuff in that is going to last, that you can expand from. That's what the best practice from the register audience has given us, as I say, not just in this survey, but over many years.
Do you ever see businesses that don't need to change, number one?
Very rarely. Most businesses need to match.
They're not going to call you in if they don't. They're going to lock the door.
Self-sectioning.
They still run their mainframe in the back office, and they're absolutely fine. Yeah, they don't need to see us.
But do you agree with the building a beachhead, I suppose, is more sensible?
Absolutely. And we talked about this in previous Regcasts as well. This is about evolution, not revolution. Shades of grey, hybrid environments. It's going to be a gradual progression.
Good to see you.
The shades of grey.
Yeah, I was going to say
the shades of grey
very
have
good so far.
these days.
Yes. Indeed they do. All right, so let's sum up this beginning. This slightly sad world of storage, because whenever we talk about storage on the Regcast, it's always about the stuff that's been left behind, and it's a bit of a miserable story.
I don't think it's sad. I think it's hidden. It's taken for granted almost that it's there. rather than being front and centre. In the past, when people have looked at things, as you say, they look at applications, and the applications needed servers and they needed some back-end storage.
Right.
That is only slowly changing as people recognise we've got loads of information here that we're not exploiting. How can we use it better? We need to access more and more from different applications into single pools. So that's the bit that's changing slowly.
Right, so the taken for grantedness manifests itself as a lack of knowledge of what's available.
Yep.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
There's a lot of legacy stuff which may or may not be useful in this new world that we're building.
Yep.
Yeah, and which means that there is a problem because you need to make a financial case for moving this stuff on. Yeah. And the problem that's with all of these cloud Regcasts, we do the common problem that traditionally investment has been tied to a particular application, a particular department, and these shared pools don't get funded very well.
Agreed.
And also, when you go forwards, migration is very difficult. Can be a very difficult time to do. So I'm surprised there's not a high percentage of people wanting to leave the older stuff there. I mean, quite a large portion said deploy new technology and migrate things into it. I'm quite sure that everyone there says some of that will be left behind as well.
This was talking about infrastructure in general, not storage in particular. If it was storage in particular, the pains of moving large volumes of data would have been different numbers.
Okay, that's why. Hence my confusion. Great.
Well, let's have a look at how we sort some of these things out, because we can't leave everyone feeling unhappy.
Doom and gloom for the first half an hour. It's all sunshine now from now onwards.
Tony's work here is done.
I can sit back and relax.
So let's have a look. So, so when we put this stuff to you guys, you came up with these 4 things. Now, what did you come up with and why?
Well, we'll go into the why, I think, as we go through each of the bullets here. I'm sure they can all read the 4 bullets on the right-hand side. And so we'll spend the bulk of the rest of the Regcast just going through each of these in turn and explaining them. The graph on the right, so on the left is the iceberg, where, clearly the IT, there's a number of IT things that need to be looked at when moving to a shared service model. I think those are some of the things. They are not just storage related, clearly, although there's some interesting things that you do need to take into account with storage. The top one there, chargeback billing, as an example, is an area that we're not covering specifically today, but I think it's an interesting topic, but that crosses the whole of the IT infrastructure, not just the storage. And I think security is probably another one that needs to be on here. Again, something that needs to be end-to-end across the whole of the IT infrastructure and not just related to storage, but storage plays a key part in that consideration.
So we can talk about security. The trouble is security is a whole Regcast on its own.
Totally.
But it's a part of this as much as it's part of anything else.
Absolutely.
Before we get into it, I do have a public service announcement, because your boss, Dale, has been in touch.
But if you recall, after I said that there are people who have good reasons for not changing. So I think we've covered that.
I think because Dale says, the red bars on this. People are not saying we don't want to do that. They're just saying it's not relevant for us. So I think that's quite legitimate.
So we covered that before Dale got there.
Yes.
You still have a job. Well done. Saved.
If whatever that is, we'll just leave you two to sort that out afterwards. Gosh. So okay, let's get on to the point one. Efficient consolidation while maximising flexibility. Well, everybody wants this. It's not very easy, is it?
No, but I mean, so when you start to look at cloud storage, and there's a few things that we think are quite important, and this is just talking about a few of those things.
Yeah.
Cost is key. It always is. It always will be in IT, particularly where the market is today. So this is about efficiency. I need to get some economies of scale. I need to drive my efficiency up. So this is about things like thin provisioning, saving capacity. So if I buy less in the first place, if I migrate it all to a central system, use thin provision to save 50%, I can have 50% less infrastructure, heat, power, cooling. It's all about that type of technology.
So do we have a nice, easy story with this? Because with when it came to server virtualization, we had this wonderful, wonderful story that you just take the servers that you got, even if they're a bit ropey, just load all your new stuff, or you don't have to buy anything for ages because you just load all your old stuff in, and you can utilize what you've already got. When you're talking about sort of 30% utilization in your storage, do we have the same story? Can we start off by just saying, squeeze everything into what you've already got?
Yeah, I mean, so what a lot of people do is, this goes back to that 47% starter beachhead. So you put your beachhead storage system in, one that is efficient and modern design, and then as you migrate stuff to it, and migration, depending on what it is, how old it is, how new it is, can be easy, can be a bit more traumatic. But as you migrate it in, a modern storage array will just do all this for you. So you'll pick up 100 terabytes, you'll stick it on your new system, and it says, well, there's only 30 of use. And that's it. I've just done a normal migration, a normal data movement that I would do anyway, and the subsystem automatically has just taken away the stuff that's irrelevant. I don't need that white space, that's just blank file system. I shall just store your core data. So you can just get that straight away.
But there are also ways of actually exploiting the information sources you have already better by sticking some gateways in front of them and virtualizing them. Not perfect, but as a halfway house, again, it might work for some people. So, again, there are always options. One thing on the thin provisioning, though, it's a great idea that you acquire less things up front, but of course you need to have the way IT is financed inside the business ready for recurring issues of, okay, thin provisioned, we're now filling up, so we need to buy some more. And them not saying, but hold on, you bought stuff 6 months ago. Why do you need to buy more again?
Explain thin provisioning in a sentence.
In a sentence, buy as much as you need now and not too much more. And then when you need more, add more. Non-interruptively.
That again is something that's a big step to make when you're butting up against the problems of having to make a business.
And the key thing is exactly that. It's a procurement model changes. It's not a project based. It is you have to expect recurring costs. You save overall. You save significant money.
Absolutely.
But you need to adopt a new a way of purchasing storage.
What we're learning from this, as number one, is very much that these behavioural changes and the technology change in this area more, I think, than any other is coming through. These go very much hand in hand.
Absolutely. There's a number of new technologies that I think that are in new modern storage arrays that you just simply do not get, unfortunately, in legacy arrays. And it's only the ones that have been around for the last 2 or 3 years that you're really going to get some of this new technology and drive that through to get the efficiencies that you need, and take out some of the old legacy, get rid of all the power and cooling costs that you've got associated with
that. Okay, so not a something for nothing, but a something for something for a little bit. The beachhead.
And interestingly, some of those power costs for storage could be quite high because they're almost certainly not being monitored at the moment, and so could be significant savings there, but do you have an idea what they might be?
Yeah. Okay. So let's have a look at the flexibility as well as the efficiency there.
So this is all about, if you look at some of the other topics we're talking about, a lot of it is management. Management was focused, mentioned briefly at the start. Management is key to these things. I mean, if you look at the amount of management costs going into storage, particularly when you've got lots of siloed, isolated storage arrays, and there's also a large fear. I think when we talk about the sophisticated, what came up early on, people were scared of what could happen. If I take on one of these sophisticated or modern systems, how do I manage that system? So these systems have to be able to be autonomic, which is a bit like breathing. It just happens itself. So this is about a system that can just do stuff by itself. So just rebalance, lay yourself out, do optimum. When I say I want a terabyte for this application, that's all I want to do as a storage admin. I want the array to say, OK, I know where to put that data, where it should come from, what tier of disks, what application. And if it changes its mind next week, the array should do that for me. So I want to take away all those management overhead. So actually a sophisticated storage system will be much easier to manage than a more traditional storage system. It's just a matter of us convincing people and demonstrating that fact. And people that have done it are clearly proven. A lot of people say, I bought this new storage array because the SIM provision saved me 50%. You ask me a year later why they're buying upgrades, it's because their management's so good. I'm now being so much more agile in my business, and just change is so easy for me to do.
And that is tied in with some of those capability charts that we had earlier, where people are now recognising the value in the automation side of things. If we'd have asked the questions 3-4 years ago, and we did, the numbers were far lower. So that acceptance of automation is coming.
Great. And we've got this multi-tenant thing to bridge, to cross here.
So there's a lot of organisations will have siloed storage systems, and that is for a bunch of reasons. One we talked about earlier on the project and financing, but kind of ignoring that for the moment. Let's just focus purely on the IT reasons and technical reasons. People want segmented systems. They want their own storage system. So if there's a problem or it gets busy, then it's my problem, not someone else. If I bought this for my project, I don't want it going slow because someone else over there is running another project. So why is my application going slower today than it was last week? Well, because someone's doing a backup. I don't know who they are. And this is about having systems that can cope with that. So it's about a system that you can get the benefits of the shared environment, the cost, the management benefits, but the ability to throw all my workloads on at once. And the system can sort itself out and cope with those very different I/O profiles, which change rapidly. And that's part of the problem. Is in the old days you knew what the workloads were. I don't now, and I've now got 20 applications which I don't know all at the same time. It's a recipe for disaster if you're not careful. And having a subsystem that can cope with that is key.
Right, I know it's inefficient, so it sort of contradicts the top of this. But isn't there the case that the behaviour is if you want to scale up, you just add another spindle, isn't it? Yes, yeah. That's, you can see, I've been hanging around this stuff my whole life. And so you do that, and that protects, and that's a sort of like that's going to get least resistance within the organisation because people feel. I know what we do. We buy another one and we get it and we set it to do that. And you say, so we have to get past that. We have to trust that you can still achieve performance.
Yeah. But you need to make saying that I can achieve performance without someone else having a problem and impacting each other. So
yes.
I've now got 10 people and they all want their different performance level. This is where you start to talk about things like quality of service. I need to be able to say, you can get the performance your application requires. And if it changes in the future, I can adapt quickly and give you more. But I need to make sure that if you just your application go nuts, it doesn't go and slow down someone else, because these are very different projects, but I need to have them on a shared.
In a minute, I'm going to ask you what goes into quality of service and exactly what that is, because I know people are going to be interested, and exactly how you tie that to what you provision, because these get to be quite deep questions fairly quickly, don't they? Yeah. Absolutely. Any more on number one?
I was just going to say that obviously management is absolutely critical to this. We're asking about the issues with the legacy storage environments of the past. We see many customers today with multiple different storage arrays at different tiers and levels within their environment. Different types of storage, and there's no single management across the whole piece. And then therefore moving data between those different layers and storage, it becomes extremely difficult. Tying the data together, doing the analysis on that data becomes almost impossible.
So another one of these sort of side projects that goes on is you have to be able to wrap the whole thing in a single management.
But if you've got common storage architectures with common management across the piece, it becomes so much easier.
Integrated management comes up time after time in the Reg audience as well. Highly desirable, something that everybody wants across the board.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was back in our sort of big bars. Green slide with the very small red bits, and there were only very few people in the red part who said it wasn't relevant to their business. Just make sure.
So this is also when you talk.
They were saying it was undesirable, which is different. So I think different red chart. So.
Yeah, I've made enough of a mess of that. Okay, now number two. So integrated with best-of-breed infrastructure. So it's integrating lots of things together.
This is going back to the point I was making earlier about the fact that HP plays in every major part of the data center. We're integrating servers, storage, networking, software, security, services into a defined turnkey solution for customers. Okay?
I see what you're doing here, this integrated with best of breed, because traditionally the discussion has been, do you integrate or do you go for best of breed?
Yeah.
And so are you trying to slip in the fact that that you buy all HP and you're trying to sort of give us the nudge, the dog whistle, that has to be best of breed at the same time?
So we are, we would clearly like to say that we're...
You like to say it, but it's not sustainable, is it? No.
I think it is. I think
yes, you think it is.
We're normally number one or number two in every part we play, but let's talk about the solution.
Yeah.
So, we're building these stacks because one of the things that Gartner came out with recently is that it takes around up to 18 months to roll out a new application. So even though we've been in this siloed world where all we've been doing is turning out applications, it's taking far too long to get those applications out onto the floor. It's taking multiple months. By going for a converged solution, you can do this within a matter of weeks because we're bundling everything together. These are pre-tested, pre-configured bundles of kit. Okay. I suppose an analogy I'd make is if you're buying a car, you normally buy a car off a forecourt. You wouldn't go out there and say, right, I'll take an engine from BMW, a transmission or a chassis from Lada, and an engine management system from Porsche, and put all of that together and hope that that's going to give you a defined performance. With a dashboard that gives you all the right and relevant information and give you the performance levels that you're expecting from that car.
Yeah, I'm no criticism of you, number one, but I'm going to outlaw car metaphors. But on this, but you're actually going further than that. You're not just saying, sort of buy a car. You're actually saying stick together all the elements of the cloud and buy some sort of pre-configured system.
Exactly, pre-configured. So what you don't get then is you don't get a couple of pallets turning up in your data center full of boxes that you then have to go and rack and stack and cable, an environment together.
That's what IT managers. And also the other thing is, reg readers are saying they don't want to do that. They don't want to do a big bang thing. They want to innovate a little bit here and then gradually evolve. Again,
this could be the beachhead that you then migrate to, and you can start really small with these things. You don't have to go for a fully configured rack. There are different layers within this. So, you can go and start small and grow as your business grows or as you move things across into it.
What's wrong with just saying that you get some sort of integrated storage thing together and you get that, and then just leave the servers and the network guys to do their own bit?
You can do that, absolutely. This is an open.
What would you sacrifice if you did that?
The testing, the time that you've taken. As I say, these are pre-configured, pre-tested. You know exactly what you're going to get because we're going to give you the figures up front. Clearly, when you start breaking that out, then it becomes more of a bespoke system, and therefore you're chancing yourself a little bit more.
What do you think? What do you think of Phil's idea, Tony? You called him out before.
This is something that lots of people have wanted for a long time because they don't have the
money
time
for
to do
it.
stuff themselves.
More money for it, Tony.
People still have to buy things.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that there still, though, will always be organisations that do need to do the DIY stuff because they are on the edge and they don't have a particular problem that fits into one of the pre-configured infrastructures. There will always be exceptions, but most of the reg readers, when we've surveyed them, tell us that the idea of having integration in management in terms of the physical infrastructure works for them. It's believing that it's affordable, believing that they can use them, and then getting the right business cases in place to pay for an entire infrastructure. But that's part of that building the bridgehead side. So we're putting in a particular project. We can put this integrated stack in and then grow from it. That's something that does appeal to people. They're just still it's relatively early days still, and people are just beginning to work out what's the reality.
Then you run into silo funding as well, don't you, though?
Which is still the problem, which is why you put a bridgehead for a silo. But
as I said earlier, convergence takes many forms.
And with one bound, he was free. Honestly. I do understand. I do understand what you mean. But what you're saying that there are advantages to this that you can sell to the business.
Absolutely. So first of all, you can deploy applications and services for your users so much quicker by using.
Give me a rule of thumb.
You're talking weeks rather than the 18 months that we were talking about originally. So you can deploy these so much quicker. It means that you can grow your business because you can get that service online quicker than ever before.
I think 18 months for an application rollout tends to indicate an organisation that doesn't know what it's doing in the first place. So I think that's an extreme case. It's certainly faster to have an integrated solution than build it yourself, even if it's only by a week or a couple of days. It's still time you're saving, things you could be doing otherwise, the business getting to value faster.
Yeah, I think you can cut cost clearly from doing this, and clearly it's less risk as well for you. Because it's already pre-configured, pre-tested. And
the less risk is really important because there are fewer gaps for things to fall into, less debugging after it's gone in. When you're doing upgrades that happen all the time in IT, there's less risk there. So there's a whole bunch of subliminally beneficial things here that also, increase availability going forward over long periods of time.
You close your ears for a minute. Does this have to be single vendor, or surely the whole point of is having an open architectures?
It's a really interesting question. Yeah. We come across this time after time. The answer is, I suspect, that you're going to end up with these pools of resources with Uber management sitting on top of it.
Yeah.
And that's again seen as being highly desirable. How well you can affect it, I don't know, but you've already got the sort of management frameworks to go back a couple of decades with the HP OpenViews and the Tivolis and the BMCs and the CAs. Those sorts of solutions have been around for a long time. So I suspect that you're going to have things optimized inside the pools, and then people layering on other management solutions on top to lift it not just into managing the entire IT infrastructure, but putting it more into that business context as well.
Important question on this before we get off it. If, say, for example, you had some infrastructure you've already bought, and it's there and it's sitting there. What about getting the consultants in, or just having a project to say, let's do some more heavy-duty integration on this? Can you build your beachhead in that way and get to the same place?
Absolutely, you can. So, if you've already got a server environment or a storage environment that you believe you can utilise, that's already on your floor, that you think you can utilise within that converged system, you can buy the rest of the components around it. You don't have to buy,
start again and buy the new thing.
Exactly, the full stack. You can buy those components, add it in, and it has been really popular. Tony said it was early days, but we've already got over 900 from a cloud system perspective. We've already got 900 out there. IDC are saying by 2016 all cloud deployments will be via a converged system such as this.
Right. Well, let's leave that one and look at what I'll be looking at. We'll look at SLAs, quality of service. What's this about then?
So this is about, traditionally when you're looking from a pure storage point of view, people looked at uptime, resilience, is my array still working? And there was a kind of a green light or a red light. It was quite straightforward. It's either working or it's not working. These days, when you start to have large shared systems, private clouds, that type of infrastructure, it's not just about the array uptime. You should take that for granted almost. Modern arrays, by pretty much all vendors these days, are pretty reliable out there. But this is about maintaining the SLAs. And SLAs is something we should talk about in a specific detail in a second. But this is about things like, will it maintain performance? Because arrays have disk drives in them, they have controllers in them, they have power supplies. All these things are going to fail at some point, and you won't notice because the green light's still on because the other component's taken over. But will it still run my business? Because if I size my application to do 100,000 of these transactions, whatever business I'm in, and my array is doing that quite happily, and a bit fails, it can only do 90,000, that's a significant problem. And often that's classified as an outage. The array's still up, it's got a green light on it, it's still serving data, but it can't keep up with my business. And I'm now losing trades, people are going off my website. So this is about making sure your system is resilient enough to cope with that.
But we've been working on that one ever since, number one was in short trousers. And it's like, what's different now about a cloud environment? Why does that change?
It changes more because you used to, a traditional system you would size very easily going forward. So you'd say this is what's going to do 5 years, and you'd often double it up. Okay, and now I can't size it because my workloads are changing so much. And also, traditionally, people bought these high-end systems that could cope with failures and carry on running. Okay, they were high-end, large-scale customers. But now people say, I'm a smaller customer, I still want to do this type of stuff. And I'm buying a more traditional, like a mid-range modular array, which is maybe a two-controller, traditionally two array controllers. That's where that market plays in. And suddenly, if one of those fails, I've only got one left, so I've lost a lot of my resources. I can't mirror cache, all the clever stuff turns off. So now it's like, well, actually, I want that high-end stuff, but at a mid-range environment. And that's what we're seeing driving down to a lower price point, a lower entry level required.
So what goes into the SLA that wasn't there before?
It's mainly performance. Performance is the discussion we had. The SLA before was uptime, and now it's about serving the business. And that's a key thing we're starting to see in there.
What I'm getting at is sort of basic. So what do you tell? What do you promise to the business?
So the business will promise a certain amount of, take performance, like a certain amount of bandwidth, or IO a second, or typically or more response time. So I will respond to queries within 10 milliseconds. These are metrics that I want to be able to handle. And I want to be sure that whatever system I put in place, when any single component fails, I can still maintain that level. I don't run along at 9 milliseconds, so it's failed, bam, it goes up to 50, 60. I want to stay below that threshold, and that's what people are looking for these days.
And not really getting it at the moment, Tony?
At the moment, people don't monitor too much, but I think that a couple of things that have cropped up here are that with cloud, in the past when you built a system, as Phil said, it was hugely over-provisioned usually because that was your one-off opportunity to get budget. So therefore, you played safe, you over-provisioned, which meant you had capacity to grow.
Well, it meant that you could deliver the thing. Something fails, then you've got a load of other stuff over here.
Only in the high-end space, not in the mid-range space.
Whereas now with cloud, you can actually over-provision for more, but it's sort of shared over-provisioning. So you don't have to double up on everything. You're only over-provisioning by maybe 20 or 30%, so that you can deal with these service interruptions or these hardware failures that cause the problems without it interrupting on the quality of service being delivered. The other thing is that a lot of the SLAs were just wrong in the past, that they were the things that could be measured, whereas now with the sort of engineering that the organisations are putting into these infrastructures, you can actually monitor a lot more. It takes more effort, but that's why the management tools and the monitoring tools are beginning to actually give you this information so you don't have to do the complex mathematics and work it out for yourself. But the important thing is that when you've got these shared resources, you might have different business units that have different requirements. So even if you haven't over-provisioned completely, when something's gone down and you've lost 10% of the capability, there might be 10% of your services being delivered that you can actually switch off or throttle for a period of time so that the really business critical stuff doesn't suffer. But that of course means that the business needs to decide on who's more important than whom, rather than letting IT do it. And that's the sort of management capability that's beginning to become available now to let people do this, whereas in the past in the silos it didn't matter. But with this shared stuff, that's where it becomes really important.
Number one, should the IT department be taking the initiative on this and saying to the business, now we're going to revamp what we give to you. We are going to measure these things, and we're going to promise you this quality of service.
I think it needs to be a joint discussion. I don't think IT should be dictating what the SLA is going to be.
No, cannot. But they can stick their hand up to say we're prepared to provide it.
Absolutely. They can clearly make a call and go, this is what we're seeing that we can provide. Out of all of this, I think the one area that IT absolutely needs to look at very carefully, when they're rolling out new services like this, is we're seeing it time and time again, is actually that the backup and recovery of that data is being forgotten about. It's like an afterthought, unfortunately, so many times.
Yeah.
And we absolutely need to be building that into the discussion and making sure that is being taken care of in the ever-shrinking global world that we're living in and the ever-shrinking backup windows that we have available. And that's
more importantly, the ever-shrinking recovery windows.
Well, and the recovery is more important than the backup.
Always has been.
And always has been.
But now the expectation is completely different order of magnitude.
Yes, and I think quite often it is if storage is forgotten, then within storage, backup and recovery is the forgotten child.
Yes.
So, and is there? There's just one question that that I've been keeping. Is there just there are a few sort of simple hits? We've not mentioned deduplication at all.
Well,
and this is, and if you want sort of to make more efficient service, then just attach yourself to this idea and you'll be able to get a huge benefit out of it.
Absolutely. By stripping out all the copies of all the data that you've already got just makes so much sense in terms of shrinking that backup window. So that's a very timely question.
Yeah.
So, clearly that has a major part to play in meeting the SLAs in terms of backup windows, etc. So, yeah.
Thanks, Tranga, for reminding us of that one before we didn't mention it. Do you have to provide a better quality of service now, or do you have to be more explicit about what that quality of service will be?
I think you and the business, as I say, have to be very explicit about what that quality of service.
And I think the quality of service needs to be good enough. It doesn't have to be excellent.
Aha.
The level of good enough will vary depending on the service.
There's only two options here, and no one's going to tick four. No one's going to tick four. If you came onto a Regcast with four,
that's the other expectation around cloud, that you've got infinite resources, whereas you don't, and so therefore, with everybody potentially competing for the same resources, who decides who gets what level of service? Has to be a business decision. You can do it in the technology, but you have to tell the technology how to allocate resources, how to throttle potential consumption growth.
It's an important one. It came up in a networks thing when you're talking about having your network working more efficiently. You can't magic an unconstrained IT environment out of nowhere. You can't magic an unconstrained storage environment. You can just be more explicit about what resources people will get.
And you need to have tiered quality service as well. So people are saying, so I want this area of the business to have X performance, and then they can carve that up to their environment as well. So it's not just flat across the board. So they can say, well, I want to overcommit and provision because that's a risk in the area. We're in development. We can over-provision quite a lot. We can take a bigger risk. Production can't, so they want one-to-one mapping. So there's a lot of areas that you need to be able to tweak that and react very, very quickly.
And that quality of service doesn't just include the performance, it also includes the backup and recovery, the data protection, potentially the security. It's everything wrapped up in this.
Yeah.
Good. Now, as you just mentioned it, we've been mentioned scaling up, and so scaling down is not a problem. Scaling up, scaling up, I believe, still is. Well, I like a nice, simple slide like this.
Did you understand this one?
I can get more or less, and I can get this. Isn't this always? Haven't we always been able to do this?
Not easy. The problem was, we go back to one of the early slides, the waves. It was very predictable then. So I'd say, well, my application is going to use 50 terabytes, and in 5 years' time, it's going to use 60. So I bought a system that could cope with that, or something around those plus or minus. These days, it's so unpredictable. I don't know what it's going to do. I don't know what my business is going to do. And I'm now putting everything into a shared resource, so I'm now running all these different applications. And the next application we haven't thought of yet is going to go on this shared infrastructure. I don't know what performance is what's going to have. I don't know what capacity it's going to have. But also, those are separate. In the past, we scaled both together.
Yeah.
You had a system that had 100 spindles in it, and I put 100 more in it, and it gave me twice the capacity, twice the performance, roughly speaking. Now people say, actually, I want the same capacity to go twice as fast. Now, my application needs to go faster, but I don't need any more capacity. So I need a system that can put a flash in there. So I've just upped performance, because flash is very low price per IOP. So the performance is exceptionally cheap. But then again, if my application needs more capacity, but performance hasn't changed, I need some low-cost, high-capacity drives. So I need to take these away and have them independently scalable now.
Do we need to get clever about tiering?
Yes. So systems need to be at a tier.
I think there's another element, and that's you claimed that everybody knew exactly what they'd need in the past. I would say that they didn't, which is why so many of them went wrong. You might have some idea, but how accurate it was in terms of either the performance or the capacity was often more guesswork than science. And the thing now is that you're able to actually put in a platform, and when either the user requirements change because they didn't understand quite what they were going to use it for, or there's been a sudden flood of people wanting to use it. Exactly. Yeah. So the requirements can change very quickly. And that's also been the case in the past, where people put in something that they thought would only have 50 users when suddenly they had 200 turning up because other people found a use for it. So I think the problem's always been there, but it's the timescales now that are different, and the expectations are different. And so that's why these type of independent capabilities to change things on the fly are really important.
I think on the fly is a key thing. And if I took a more traditional system, I could make it go twice as fast typically, and it would probably take me several months to do it.
And you'd probably have to migrate the data from one platform to another to get there.
And I would have a whole project going out there, maybe get some professional services in to do it, maybe an outage, maybe not, just get it all done. These days, I want to go twice as fast, I want it by next week. So all those new flash memory turn up, push it in there, press a button, damn, that's what I want to do, and that's what people are asking for.
And really, with the performance, the fundamental thing on performance, get down to brass tacks, use the flash memory.
For those high-performance areas, you need flash in there. Because if you look at hard disk performance, hard disks are the same speed they were years ago. They're just 10 times the capacity. Therefore, it's going 10 times slower per gigabyte. I need some alternate technology in there to take the heat off. But, is the answer an all-flash array? Typically not. Yes, we do all-flash arrays, but most people need a little bit of flash and then the bulk of it on some more generic, traditional type storage. And then you get the best of both worlds. And that's what we're seeing customers deploy.
Okay, that's good. And can we be? And again, is the understanding here? Do you find when you're doing when you go and you're talking to people about scaling these on different dimensions? At the moment, are people thinking in this way?
I think for some people it's still early days. For others, yes, they're there already, and we're seeing the proliferation of flash vendors out there now. I think the market is turning towards. Clearly, there's a drive towards performance going out there, but I think it's still early days for most IT shops.
Okay, now there's a lot of thinking to be done on this, isn't there? There's a lot of sitting down and saying, what really do we need?
Yes.
What do we need, and how does that match to what we deliver and what people are going to see, whether they're outside or inside the organisation?
Yeah. And exactly where are we starting from?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. You have to know where you're starting from. If you're going to go on a journey, then you need to know where you are today.
Where you are today.
And I think it's a question of using industry advice, bringing in consultants. HP has a starting point called the Converged Cloud Workshop. Where we'll sit down with with you, but it's not just a discussion with IT, it's a discussion with the business, with the line of business managers, with the CXO level people within the company, and go, where do you expect to see your business in 2 to 3 years'
Right,
time?
so you're making these linkages between what the business wants.
Absolutely key. That's the starting point. That has to be the starting point. Right, now we know where we are today, now we know where we're going, now we can put the steps in place to make sure we take you on that journey.
And get the business to change the processes on its side as well at the same time.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You know, I think there's a, you know, I keep going back to it, conversion takes many forms, but actually what I mean by that is actually that there are things that you know, businesses need to look at fundamentally with the way that processes work, governance models work, buying processes work within the companies that need to adapt and change to address the new world that we're in.
Mm-hmm. Now you've put in here, okay, we've done the modern storage architecture. There will be a penalty, as in if you've got a load of legacy stuff, it's not going to get you there.
It's not going to get you there. It doesn't have the flexibility, the agility, you know, and all those kind of good things that we've been talking about.
Often, when you say, "Oh, maybe I should reuse that. I want to reuse it because it saves me money," or type of approach. In reality, often it doesn't. You know, there's often a business case that says, actually, if I move to something that can save me money with efficiency and management, and depending on what I've got in part, it may well be cheaper to replace some of it with modern technology.
Yeah.
It's not such as it's emotional. I bought it, I want to keep it. There's a point where actually it's more cost effective to replace some of it. It doesn't need to be. It
can also be the way the accounting works inside the business, that they haven't depreciated it off the books yet and things like
fully,
this.
And then at a point you have to wait.
But there might be some things that there's really good reasons for keeping. Back to that slide we had earlier. Other things that there might be really good reasons for, you know, migrating off of.
And so, these final 2 points here, they are the single point of management, always.
Yeah. Single point management, you know, I think has been a mantra on the call today, but not just storage management, but server networking management at the same time.
If you put the money into your integration, then the management makes that single point.
And the register audience tells us integrated management tools are very definitely very desirable.
Okay, well that's well, we'll do the guys with the extra things we've got a lot of them today. Is there anything if they were starting just to just to wrap up? I'll give this one to you, number one. If they were starting today, this afternoon, inspired, what do you do?
Contact HP
and
order a converged storage converged cloud workshop.
Now be sensible.
But you know, I think you know, look at that. Look at converged systems as a fast way of getting there as well.
Yeah.
You know, but you've got know where you are today. You know, if you don't understand your own environment and where you are today, and you don't understand where the business wants to go, then clearly, you know, that's when you need to start doing some talking.
Nodding along with that.
Lots of people really have a very unclear picture of exactly what they have in their data center today and who's using it and why is it being used. That's key to everything. You've got to know what you're delivering. Is it meeting the quality requirements of the users or not? Are you overperforming? You've got to have some baseline before you can move forward.
This is not going to be over by next Tuesday, is it?
Probably not. Maybe Wednesday or Thursday.
Always the optimist right at the end. Thank you very much, Dr. Stats. Thank you very much, number one, number two. And thank you very much for watching. Let us know what you thought of that. We hope that it was relevant for you, so tell us if it was, and even if it wasn't. I've been Tim Phillips, and from the Register. Goodbye.